Imagine walking through an art gallery. Suddenly, you find yourself in front of an immense, brilliant, and spectacular painting. You stop to admire it. It's captivating. But as you step closer, you notice something strange. The painting isn't a canvas, it's a mirror. And the most unsettling part is that when you look into it, you don't see your own reflection. You only see an idealized version of the person who brought you to the gallery in the first place. Have you ever felt that in a relationship, whether romantic, a friendship, or within your family? Your needs, your fears, and your own voice seem to vanish just to feed someone else's ego. Have you felt exhausted trying to fill a well that, no matter how much attention you give it, never seems to be full? If you've experienced this, it's very likely you've had a close encounter with narcissism. But here is the problem. We often think a narcissist is simply someone who is stuck up or loves themselves too much. Oh, they're just self-centered, we say. However, the reality is much more complex and often much sadder. Today we are going to take an uncomfortable but necessary journey. We are going to cross the threshold and step inside the mind of a narcissist. Not to justify their actions, but so that you can understand the mechanism behind the mask and finally reclaim control of your own narrative. Reframing. The fragility behind the armor. The first thing we must do is tear down the primary myth. Narcissism is not an excess of self-love. In fact, it is quite the opposite. Think of a healthy person's ego like a tennis ball, solid, elastic, and able to bounce back if it takes a hit. A narcissist's ego, on the other hand, is like an immense glass balloon. It looks imposing and shiny, but inside it is empty and extremely fragile. Any tiny criticism, any lack of attention, is like a stone thrown against that glass. That is why a narcissist doesn't attack you, because they feel superior. They attack because they have a terrifying fear that the world, and especially themselves, will discover that behind that armor, there is nothing solid. The revelation here is that narcissism is an extreme defense mechanism. It is a false identity, built to protect a core that feels deeply flawed, ashamed, or non-existent. When you understand that their grandiosity is actually a symptom of pathological insecurity, the power they hold over you begins to waver. The mechanism, the neuroscience of the void. What is actually happening in the brains of these individuals? Let's break it down. Structural empathy deficiency. Neuroimaging studies have found something fascinating. Individuals with narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, often have less grey matter thickness in the left anterior insular cortex. What does that part of the brain do? It is the area associated with emotional empathy and compassion. It's not that they don't understand that you are in pain. That is cognitive empathy, and they often have plenty of it to manipulate others. It's that their brain doesn't feel your pain. To them, other people are not subjects with their own feelings, but objects, or as we say in psychology, narcissistic supply. You are like a battery providing the energy they cannot generate themselves. Validation, admiration, status, or even fear. The dopamine cycle and love bombing. At the beginning, a narcissist will put you on a pedestal. This is known as love bombing. In this phase, both your brain and theirs are flooded with dopamine. They idealize you because you are the mirror, reflecting back the image that they are perfect. But as soon as you show a human weakness, or worse, an opinion of your own, the mirror becomes smudged. That is when devaluation occurs. Their brain switches off empathy and moves into survival mode. You stop being the source of their pleasure and become the cause of their frustration. Practical strategies. How to protect your peace. If you are dealing with someone like this, you need psychological survival tools. You cannot change a narcissist. That requires years of specialized therapy and a will they rarely possess. But you can change how you interact with them. Tool 1. The grey rock technique. This is the gold standard when you cannot cut contact, for example with a boss or an ex with whom you share children. How to apply it? Become the most boring person in the world. Respond with one-syllable words. Yes, no, I see. Don't share your joys or your sorrows. A narcissist seeks an emotional reaction. If you don't give them fuel, they will eventually look for another source of supply. Tool 2. Establish non-negotiable boundaries. A narcissist sees boundaries as personal challenges. Practical tip: do not explain your boundaries. If you explain, they debate. Instead of saying, It hurts me when you talk to me like that because, say, I'm not going to continue this conversation if you shout. If they shout, hang up or leave the room. The boundary isn't for them to learn, it's to protect your space. Tool 3. Gaslighting detox. The narcissist will try to make you doubt your own reality. That never happened. You're crazy. You're too sensitive. Action. Start a journal. Write down the facts of what happened. Not to show it to them, but to have your own anchor to reality. When you doubt yourself, go back to your notes. Your memory is more reliable than they want you to believe. Warnings. Not everything is as it seems. It is vital to make a distinction here, as the narcissist label is thrown around very easily today. Traits versus disorder. We all have narcissistic traits at times. The need for attention, occasional selfishness. The disorder is a rigid, long-lasting, and destructive pattern. ADHD and autism. Sometimes people with ADHD may seem narcissistic because they get distracted or interrupt, and people on the autism spectrum may seem so due to difficulties reading social cues. The key difference is intent and the capacity for genuine guilt. High sensitivity, HSP. If you are an HSP, you are the ideal target for a narcissist. Your abundance of empathy is their favourite meal. Be careful not to try to heal them with your love. It is a battle your nervous system will lose. Psychological support. Reclaiming your reflection. If you have been under the influence of a narcissistic mind, I want to tell you something you may not have heard in a long time. You matter for who you are, not for what you give. It is normal to feel confused, exhausted, and to have rock-bottom self-esteem. It is the result of having to walk on eggshells constantly. It's not your fault for not seeing it sooner. Narcissists are experts at detecting kind, empathetic people to use as anchors. Your value does not depend on the approval of someone who is incapable of seeing their own worth without trampling on yours. You have the right to have a voice and to say no. Today, I invite you to stop trying to figure out what they are thinking and start asking yourself what you need. The first step to stepping out of the narcissistic mirror is to turn your gaze back to yourself. Have you identified with any of these situations? I'd love to read about your experience in the comments. Sharing our stories is the best way to break the isolation that narcissism imposes. You are not anyone's support system. You are the protagonist of your own life. See you in the next video.